Million Dollar Stories, where we get to interview authors from all over the world. I love talking to authors because they have the courage to take their thoughts, their stories, and put it down in a book and share it with the many, ultimately changing their legacy and destiny in the process. And I recommend, if you're an entrepreneur out there, you do write a book. Why is that? Because you get very clear minded, and also you can become sort of a mentor to others. And if you need help with that, check out dreamstarterspublishing.com. We can help you out with wherever you're at in the process. And if you already have the book that's done, check out bookmarketingcrm.com, and you can use the book properly to generate leads for your business. Now, the guest that we're going to have here in a few minutes here is ideal for someone who has a business, right? You're growing a team. You need that buy-in from the people around you. And I think that's maybe something that people overlook. They think that your vision is just going to basically infect others. And maybe they do for a little bit, but after a little bit of time, maybe it wears off, and you need to harness that focus again. And that's why we're having our next guest. He wrote a book called Stretch, Not Snap: Create a Self-Funded Incentive Plan and Employee Entitlement, and Get Your Vision Shared by All. And Alex Freitag, let me just read off a little bit of his bio. It's pretty phenomenal. All right. Alex Freitag is the creator of ProfitWorks, a business coaching and training company focused on helping entrepreneurial leadership teams simplify, clarify, and achieve their vision. With over 25 years of experience helping hundreds of entrepreneurs get everything they want from their businesses, he is recognized as an expert in the field of leadership, team alignment, culture development, and employee engagement. So without further ado, it is an honor to have Alex Freitag. Thanks so much for being here, man.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Well,
Thanks for
let's let's start off with the genesis of this book. I mean, obviously you have a couple other ones, I think, but what made you want to sit down and write this newest one that just came out at the end of January?
yeah, it was a labor of love. And the original book was called Vision Works, my first book in 14, and then Profit Works came out in 2020. And this is a fable version. So Stretch Not Snap is a fable version of Profit Works. And the probably the reason for writing it is I'm trying to reach entrepreneurs, and a lot of us have like ADD, and we're all over the place. And I know that fables appeal to me. I'm like a high quick start, 100 ideas a week, and if I'm reading a fable, I get pulled in, right? And I like stories. And so I saw the fable in this. It's sort of a fable version of Profit Works. So Profit Works is kind of a business book on how to create an incentive plan and how to get your employees to understand profitability and drive incremental improvement so they can pay for it themselves. Like it's self-funded. And this took that idea and put it into a form of like a hypothetical business that so a visionary, an entrepreneur could really see it in action and see it more clearly than the standard textbook. So that's why I wrote that.
God, it reminds me of Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? That's why it's written in a storybook form, right? Where it's telling a story of two individuals, and it's really hypothetical, but when you have it in that fashion, it's more memorable. Also reminds me of a book called Built to Sell. Have you ever read that book?
Yep, I have with that. Yep,
Yep.
exactly.
So it's
You're,
the same fashion, but I like it. So yeah, a
yeah,
little bit of a background. If you can maybe give us the glimpse of where you come from, how you got into this crazy world of entrepreneurship, and why you love helping entrepreneurs, that'd be very
sure.
helpful.
Happy to. Yeah, appreciate that. So I started in a large company out of college. It was Cardinal Health here in Columbus, Ohio, and got into the bureaucracy. And actually, it was a great business. But I was sort of tempted by a business plan my brother wrote in 1996 to start ProfitWorks. So I jumped ship, left this very comfortable, sort of stable, riskless, somewhat riskless environment, and without a paycheck for 6 years plus helping my brother build this business. And it evolved into something called ownership thinking. But I loved working with entrepreneurs through this and getting employees to think and act like owners. And so as I realized how much I enjoyed doing that, working with sort of the visionary entrepreneurs, it just became the reason I get up in the morning. And so Fast forward, I became an EOS implementer in 2013. And EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard about the book Traction or
Oh
are
yeah.
running EOS, either with an implementer or self-implementing, which is great. And it's pulled me into this entrepreneurial world in such a big way, and we can have such an impact on these organizations to help them get everything they want and live this sort of ideal life. Of having a lot more time to do things their passions that they want to do. So really have enjoyed that. And it's working with leadership teams over the last 11 years, and then also through ProfitWorks, a separate company, working with employees of my client companies to help the employees become more engaged in the vision and help them really understand how the company makes money and how they impact that and how they benefit when the company is profitable. So it's been a long journey, 28 years to this point, but maybe a 28-year overnight success, I guess you could say.
Ownership thinking, man, that is huge. I have a phrase in my company, uh, think like an entrepreneur. I always say that to everybody in my
Yeah,
company. And the reason why is because an entrepreneur runs to the chaos and,
yeah,
there's opportunity in the chaos. And if you treat that sector, that division as if it's your own, you basically can fix the problems. You can you can be of value. The more value that you offer, the more you're rewarded financially, mentally, spiritually. I mean, there's so many things that come along with thinking like an entrepreneur. And I know it has served my company because I'm looking for more of an entrepreneur minded person. And maybe
yeah,
that's just the type of person I attract with podcasts and books and all that. But that
absolutely.
right there is so significant for any entrepreneur because if you
Yeah,
can maybe surround yourself with entrepreneur like people, you don't have to be there every step of the way and being the go-to solution, right? You're actually giving them the tools and the resources to maybe solve the problems as they see fit, giving them more of this responsibility, but more buy into the company that they can run as fast as they want based off of their own development. Am I right?
right. You're absolutely right, Mike. And actually, the books that I've written are based on the bell curve that's called the Yerkes-Dodson principle. And if you think like an entrepreneur, entrepreneurs are at the top of that bell curve, and the two axes are basically tension or anxiety. If you think about an entrepreneur constantly having risk and taking risk and uncertainty and not sure if they're making the right choice or is the product going to work or the service or whatever it is, there's a sense of uncertainty there. And the x-axis, the vertical one is performance. And so when there's tension, more tension creates higher levels of performance until it doesn't. And so oftentimes, if to relate it back to what I'm doing with ProfitWorks, employees can often be on the left side of that bell curve where they have not a lot asked of them. They're not scorecards, they're not high expectations of performance, and there tends to be lower levels of performance. And a lot of employees can be living an entitlement mentality. They're not thinking like an owner, they're not thinking like an entrepreneur. And as companies add, and this is how I coach teams of entrepreneurs, uh, add attention to the environment, like expected results in terms of like an incentive plan has a certain threshold of profit that has to be reached before it kicks in. That tension is positive, and it causes people to get more creative and think outside the box, not rely on the entrepreneur necessarily all the time for the answer, but really get more involved in solving their own problems. So they move from entitlement to earning, which is the top of that bell curve, without falling into fear where tension's too high. So that's sort of the basis of the philosophy it's in the three books that I've got out there.
Are there any trends that you've come across that are very significant, maybe for someone listening who's growing a business that they should be aware of? Like,
Yeah,
there's that phrase of quiet quitting. Most likely if the person stops, showing up or answering the text messages or
yep,
doing anything, they're about to quit, but they're losing engagement within the company, which it's only a matter of time before they just say the hell with it. So
yeah,
I think people are jumping ship faster and faster now. I think things are way more temporary than they've ever been. So
yeah,
people don't
yeah.
look at this career that they once pursued to have any meaning to their life anymore. So I don't know. There's something going on. I know that it gives us entrepreneurs a major advantage because if there's more buy-in, if we stick to something longer than the next person, we're going to
Right.
reap the rewards eventually. So I think it's a great time for entrepreneurs, but what's happening out in the workplace?
Yeah, a few trends that I've seen in the long time I've been doing this, but one is around transparency. So in the 90s, early 2000s, entrepreneurs not sharing a ton of information with their workforce. And in my experience, in the absence of information, people make stuff up. And so if you have employees who don't know if we're winning or losing or how we're doing, they're more apt to leave the company if they're not really pulled in. They can't see the scoreboard, every week or every quarter. They don't know if the company's like sinking or thriving or whatever it is. And so transparency is a common trend that I've seen. I think it's much more leading edge. It used to be very bleeding edge years ago. And so I'm encouraging companies to share more information with the employees so they can make better decisions. And it might be around a P&L. A lot of companies, if they're doing, $5 million in sales, the employee thinks, oh, he's got $5 million or she's got $5 million. And they're not thinking about all the costs involved in the business, labor and materials and all the operating expenses and so forth. And it might be actually losing money. But oftentimes it's south of 10%. And so that is a huge trend where when you start to open the books a little bit to the employees, they get more excited about it. They appreciate knowing what the score is, and they can make better decisions that help drive increased profitability in the organization. So that's probably the biggest trend that I've seen recently. It also increases retention. So to your point, Mike, about employee retention and people staying with companies when they feel like they're part of the culture. And culture is very intentional. If you don't make it intentional, it's just going to happen by accident. And then you get what you get. So by taking deliberate steps to share financial information, live by core values, hire and fire and review, reward and recognize, have high expectations, performance around scorecards and measurables, those kinds of habits in an organization create an intentional culture, and you have this higher level of engagement and retention, which should drive more profitability to the company as well, because you're not always searching for new people to try to backfill. So that's a
The
big one.
the smaller the company, I think it's more crucial to set the tone in the culture, right? I mean, maybe
Yeah.
it's big everywhere, it's important everywhere, but the smaller the company, I mean, I think there's so much weight on every single person that's added to that team. So
Yeah.
one person can affect the entire company pretty fast, and that's why
Right.
you have to have very high standards or protect the team members from maybe somebody who doesn't share the vision or want to be a part of the team, because
Yeah.
energy is contagious, right? High energy is contagious, but also low energy. So what
Yeah.
would you say about those entrepreneurs out there? The smaller the company, the more you have to put emphasis on who joins up with you. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of a call out to core values. Like if an entrepreneur knows, and I have my core values behind me here for those who are able to see, but help first, be humbly confident, do the right thing, do what you say, and grow or die. I hire and fire, but really hire people who share my core values, which are timeless guiding principles. It goes back to like Jim Collins and built to last and good to great and great by choice. Those habits and those practices help you attract employees who share your core values, and then make sure that you are, let's say, the first clean kill awakens the whole herd. But if you have somebody that's not living and breathing those core values, take steps to try to coach them up or turn them over, because the toxic person in the culture will actually drive other people away like rock stars. You'll lose your best people if you hang on to the toxic folks.
Yep.
So yes, there's a lot of coaching around that. I think A players like to be around A players, and people who like accountability, who like scorecards and measurables, and like I got to do 10 this week and I got 8, I'm going to do 11 next week, and all those kind of like exciting habits create a positive culture where you say like energy attracts energy.
Hmm.
And then, as the company shines the light all throughout the organization, they start to identify barriers to their growth, and they can take care of those, put them on issues lists, get them resolved through their team. So the burden starts to come off of the entrepreneur's shoulders and onto the team's shoulders, and they can delegate more to their team. So it's a very positive evolution of the entrepreneurial business.
I'm looking at your book here. I'm just looking at the outline, and it's very in depth. But is there maybe a quick little game plan that you could present to an entrepreneur of whether how to increase engagement, how to increase excitement, sharing the vision plan, right? Once again, show the promised land, but you also show the steps how you're going to get there, the metrics, the
Right,
goals.
right.
What would you say to somebody who's, let's just say, doing 1 to 5 million, all right?
Yeah, okay.
And 20 people are on the team, let's just say maximum. What would you say to that type of person? Because I would say the average person who is listening most likely is getting close to that million or maybe has $1 million business. So what would you say?
That's great. Three steps really to this to try to simplify it. One is run on an operating system. An operating system like EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, is great for our size companies, right? 1 to 5, 10 to 250 employees. Maybe it's closer to 10 or even 5 employees. But if you read a book called Get a Grip by Mike Payton and Gino Wickman, that's the Fable version of traction. And once you have that operating system kind of up and running, you've got a clear vision, you've pulled it out, everybody's aligned on the same page, you've got discipline and accountability, and you're developing a healthy, open and honest leadership team. With that, that's step one. The second step is once you've got great people and you're using that operating system, you can develop a simple self-funded incentive plan. Do not overthink this and read ProfitWorks for like a quick and dirty kind of formula for how to do it. And but have some kind of trigger, a threshold, some tension there that has to be reached before it kicks in. Otherwise, you'll create entitlement mentality. And it's got to be simple, easy to explain, easy to understand for people who don't occupy themselves with gross margin and all types of accounting jargon every day. So make it really simple, easy to understand and explain. The last piece is what I call the missing link, and you're trying to connect that operating system to the incentive plan so that the employees really understand, they speak or think like an owner, they can understand what are the variable costs in the business and how do I increase operational efficiency. So profit education, Mike, becomes a third element. So an operating system, a self-funded incentive plan, and then profit education to link the two together so that you have great people and they really understand how to make the flywheel spin.
How often do you recommend the owner meets with the team members one on one and then as a group or with divisions?
My suggestion is weekly with the leadership team, and it's about 90 minutes a week. What I have found is that when you commit to that, just almost like religion, right? It's Mondays from 9 to 10:30. Some of the other meetings that you've been having, you don't have to have because everything can go right into that meeting, and you start to free up 2 to 3 times that amount
Yeah,
that you're
I've
dedicating to
noticed
the 90
that.
minutes.
What I used to have individual meetings on Mondays and then
Okay,
team meetings on Tuesdays. What I
that's great.
realized is that team meetings pretty much, if you do it right, you don't need the individual meetings as much. Maybe
Yes.
sparingly, but not consistently.
I think you're right. I think the individual meetings may be on a case by case basis. If you have a new leadership team member who needs a little bit more, onboarding, and you might meet with them more frequently. But it might be that the rock star, you're in the team meetings, but you might meet with them monthly or even quarterly. But you're trying to have a forum for your folks to voice any concerns, any issues, any barriers, those kinds of things. And then within those team meetings, you have a scorecard, you have some key priorities for the quarter that everybody's kind of helping move and shepherd forward, and you can address a lot of issues for the week and set them up and knock them down. And then within, if you have a entire organization, let's say you have 10 people in the organization, it's a small organization. I suggest quarterly state of the company meetings where you're saying, here's where we've been, here's where we are, and here's where we're going, past, present, future. And you can really help people start to see, okay, we're doing great, or we're behind the 8 ball, or we got to, tighten up this or document these processes or whatever it might be. So those meetings are less frequent, but it's all hands, 15, 20 minutes, just help everybody understand the landscape.
What about the three discoveries here? The third one really caught my eye, but maybe if you can kind of run through three discoveries,
Yeah.
start with people, transparency is tension, and then the third one that really spiked my interest was celebration increases trust. What are these?
Yeah. Thank you. So start with people is what I alluded to is, and this was a discovery before I knew what EOS was, and I was going into these organizations and helping them teach the employees about profit and loss and cash and the difference between profit and cash and all these kinds of things. And I realized my assumption was that everybody was on the same page with the vision, and it just wasn't true in every case. So my discovery was we got to get the right people on the bus, as Jim Collins says. First, who, and then get them in the right seats. And the reality is, an incentive plan in this example is not going to necessarily change everybody's behavior immediately. So we got to do the hard work of leading and managing and holding people accountable first, have really good leaders and hire and fire around core values and the right seats, and do that tough discipline work. And then the incentive plan can come on top of that. So start with people as that first discovery. The second one around information is tension is sits on that bell curve really. So tension from low to high and transparency from low to high. If you have no transparency, you're not sharing any information, the employees can fall into entitlement mentality and they'll make up stories and they'll, again, figure if you're a $5 million company, you have $5 million, right? They don't think about all the costs involved. And so by sharing more information and share as much as you're comfortable sharing, but start to dip a toe in the water with transparency, it creates a bit of tension because people see, oh, wow, we have goals, we have a budget, we have costs, we have, constraints within which we have to work. We don't have unlimited funds to put into this new product or service or whatever it might be. And they start to think like an owner. And so the tension's a very positive thing in terms of that top of the bell curve. And then the last discovery, this is a more recent one for me, is to see the incentive plan not necessarily as life-changing dollars where people are making, bazillion dollars through their incentive plan. It's less focused on that than it is using it as a tool to create a sense of community, a sense of celebration, a sense of we're on the same team together. And if we hit these 1-year targets, everybody gets a little bit of percentage of their paycheck. And so the books get into how to define that and some formulas for that, how to think about that. But the celebration, and there's a book by Paul Zak called the Trust Effect, I think. I can't remember the exact name, but Paul Zak, Z-A-K. And he talks about, like, in our brains, when we celebrate, the chemicals that are floating around for us are high celebration and high trust chemicals like oxytocin, versus cortisol on the fear side of that bell curve, or versus if there's no chemicals floating around with apathy. So to try to get into that celebration zone, it helps increase trust, which builds camaraderie and celebration and focus for the team. And it becomes a less of a focus on how much money am I getting out of my incentive plan than I'm part of a winning team. And there's a lot of satisfaction in that, even if there wasn't a financial reward to that. So that's what that third discovery is about. Really
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. I've realized that, you need to promote people when they win, right? There's something about showing other people's wins and really
Yeah,
highlighting people in front of others. So rather than me just say, hey, really nice job, Rob, right? I want to do it in front of others. And I think that's
yeah,
showing, hey, number one, I take notice of it, but I'm commending somebody in front of others, which is obviously maybe making it very well known of what I look up to, what I'm looking for, right? So
right. Yeah,
there's a lot of things happen psychologically, but also the fact that it's not just all right, individually we're all winning. It's that we're winning as a team, because the more you win on the sales side, the more the
yeah,
people on the operations side that are on this text are going to actually reap the benefits too. So it really does bring people together. Group text messages, I used to hate it in the corporate world.
right.
I love them in my own business. I don't know if they do because they never really tell me, and they'll probably just say, "Yeah, that doesn't mind." I mean, we joke
Yeah,
around in them, but there is something that's happening in these small. I mean, a company that has 15 people, 20 people,
yeah,
that's a small organization compared to the big companies. You can get away with these group text messages and that, and there is buy-in. There's people joking around. There's people having fun, and I think that if people can really have no distinction between work and play, then you can win. It's very much like the Alan
yeah.
Watts quote.
I totally agree with you. And a couple of things that makes me think about are, our philosophy is to go from me to thinking about just about me and my money and my comp and my me this my to we, right? So we're
Yeah.
thinking like an owner, we're thinking like an entrepreneur. It's about the organization. It's about one company. And you mentioned in public, we want to praise in public, right? And it makes people feel good. It's tough to measure these days with a lot of the technology. You can actually see the chemistry in if you were to put somebody, through a measurement device to see what's happening. But that causes retention. It makes people feel good, and it's not always about the money. It's that sort of heart versus head kind of thing. And probably the third piece, Mike, that you made me think of was if you're involved in this intentional culture where maybe you're doing a group text, that entrepreneur is the message, and they're sending a message certainly through the text, but also non-verbally, what kind of culture they're trying to create, where we celebrate each other and we recognize each other, we appreciate each other. And there's a lot of research now around the power of gratitude in terms of building a sense of wholeness in people and a feeling that they're part of something bigger than just themselves. So it gets them out of that entitlement and into like a high performance culture, which is a lot of fun. So thank you for saying that. It's great.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad it makes sense to you, because I know it internally there's something that's happening, and to really put words to it, I really don't see how. I mean, there's a lot of psychological things that happen in the world of leadership, right?
Yeah.
You can't be the go-to solution like I was saying before. You kind of have to let people run and do their thing, and then there's a balance to everything. Are we texting too much? Is there the right time? Or when do you get involved? When do you let people kind of figure it out on their own? There's so much psychology. I think that's why I love it so much, is because everything to me is a game. And like, are you
Yeah.
playing the game to your best that also gets the best out of those around you? And
Yeah.
it sounds like
Uh,
you're in that same world of like kind of figuring out the equation that does does the magic, if you will.
it's really true. It's and the game analogy is really powerful because business is like a game, and there is a scorecard, and you can use a P&L or cash or whatever tool you want to look at that, but you're winning or you're losing, and as you know, grow or die is
I
our
love that.
psychology.
I love that core value. I wanted to ask you about that at the end, but we can get into it right
Yeah.
now. The grow or die. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, if the reality is, as an entrepreneur, if we're not growing, we are slowly dying. Somebody's going to come around us and just eat our lunch or just pass us by and make us neutral. And so we've always got to be thinking about what's next and how to, what's the adjacent possible to this, new product or service or whatever it might be, and getting creative and looking at perhaps partnerships or strategic alliances with other businesses that can help make things exponentially more impactful for our target market, whoever we want to be a hero to. If it's entrepreneurs, then so be it. But it's a it's a it's a belief certainly that I have as an EOS implementer, as an entrepreneur, but also it's one that our clients subscribe to. They are frustrated often. They've hit a ceiling and they want to grow and they can't figure it out. And so they look to me as a coach to help them get past that, whatever is that barrier that's holding them back, and either curbing profits or people issues or whatever it might be, and then I can help get unstuck and keep growing and free them to their next level. So it's very very meaningful to me personally.
I once heard this great quote: "People will always rise to their standards, but fall to their systems and processes." And it stuck
Yeah,
with me. It's like, what was the biggest weakness of ours? Having systems and processes in place that we stick to. And because you can have all these dreams and visions and standards as a person, but when it comes to you making this scalable and having everything together, where if someone were to join the team, there's not much of a bumpy road ahead, where it makes it almost like a daunting task to bring people on, where you can pretty much have it just take the battalion or
right.
baton and hand it off and they just run with it. It allows you to increase your speed. And as an entrepreneur, as a small business, I think speed, that's one of our core values, is so crucial. And when you have the right systems and processes in place, speed, you can actually implement it right away, and it doesn't slow down the entire team, and people aren't, being hurt financially whenever, these small adjustments are made. It just keeps getting
Yeah,
bigger and better and faster and more efficient.
I love that. And you probably know the creator of Dilbert, Scott Adams. He's an author. I'm sure your listeners are readers and learners, but he's got a book, and in that he uses a similar quote. He says, "Your results are perfect for the system you're using." And so,
Yeah. It's like what got you here is what's going to keep you here. Plain and simple.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you don't like the results, go back to the habits. What is the system you've got, and maybe challenge it and tweak it so that you can get different results. So it's not insanity, right? So it's great. I love that.
So, how do you get involved with somebody? Let's maybe, you're starting to notice people drift within the company. And I mean, you're only as good as your team. That's
Yeah.
the way I look at it now, especially as you grow. I mean, you can have the greatest entrepreneur ever, right? But if their team sucks, what the hell? What do you have? So, let's just say somebody's going through a difficult time on the team, or maybe somebody's kind of figuring out if they want to stay on the team or not. As an entrepreneur, what do you do to maybe bring back that energy or to refocus them? When do you get involved? What do you do specifically? Is there anything that you recommend to maybe to get the best out of that person once again?
Yeah, that's a deep question too. The way I look at it, and I'm in my session room now where I have leadership teams, usually 3 to 7 members of a team of an entrepreneurial organization. And I look at each team member individually, but I also look at the team as a unit because I'm coaching the team, and teams have team health, right? And team health in our definition is kind of like the Patrick Lencioni piece. If you know 5 dysfunctions of a team,
Mm.
they got to be open and honest, right? And they got to have healthy conflict, but they have to have a healthy amount of trust. When they trust each other, they can enter the danger and have difficult conversations around key issues that are affecting the business, and get to the other side of that issue, get clarity and buy-in, and so forth, move toward results. If one member of that team is struggling, we need to address that. That's like an elephant in the room. And so how it's done, there's an art to that, and there's a time and a place. So oftentimes, depending on the situation, it might be that it's got to be a one-to-one where the entrepreneur, takes that person, hey, what's going on? Like, and they got to allow and allocate time to coach this person, and ask them, to share, and to kind of see if it's a super sensitive issue. I would take it offline. There are other times when you can actually do that with the team, and it might just depend on the severity of the issue or what's bothering the person. I relate to sports. If you think about the Bulls and Phil Jackson, and that, like, the team dynamics of that and how fast that team can get really effective is very much related to the effectiveness of that coach. So I know that Phil Jackson would pull people to the side and, like, chew them out, like tough love, healthy conflict, in order to try to get that team to function like a well-oiled machine. So those are some ideas, but hopefully that's helpful.
Well, I've also heard stats on most people nowadays are not really looking for a higher pay as the number one motivation to stay at a company. It
Yeah,
is, it has to do with that career being tied to their purpose, to their strengths, to has meaning in their life. They actually make an impact.
yeah,
It fits in their dream schedule, their dream life.
yes.
To me, that is sort of the benefit of creating a small business. You don't have the corporate lifestyle. You could be a little bit more free flowing, and I think that's huge nowadays, right? Smaller business can do that. Maybe the pay's not there right away, but maybe if you have an incentive plan, that could become something. So,
Yeah.
what's going on out there? Am I right about saying that most people are not making a decision based off of money? It's more so about lifestyle. And yeah, let's start off with that one, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And the surveys show that the reason people leave organizations typically is they have a bad boss. They're not so the word boss, the person who is managing them is either not giving them enough attention, is not coaching them, is not helping them grow and learn and move up in the organization. Now, when they leave, they might say, I'm not making enough money, I'm going over here. But deeper exit interviews show that it tends to be more cultural than it is around the dollars and cents. So that gets into the heart versus the head kind of yin and yang of why people, we're here for a short time in our lives, and so we want to love the work we're doing, and we want to be great at it, and certainly we want to be compensated fairly for the value that we're adding in the organizations. But if we have a group of people that shares similar core values, and they hold each other accountable and live and breathe those, and then there's a high expectations of performance around financial metrics and scorecard metrics, and the company's moving in the right direction and people are growing and making a little bit more money too. I think all those pieces might play a role in retention. And but do think about that boss equation. Like if you are so busy that you don't have time in your schedule to give to your direct reports, the folks that are on your team, they're needing to be nurtured, and they need your guidance, your mentorship, or just go to lunch with them, but sort of appeal to that softer side versus just drive the numbers. And I think that's really important.
Another thing I'm thinking about doing is having once a year team meetings at a certain location in the United States somewhere, right? Where everybody
Yeah,
flies in or they travel to it and everybody
right.
gets to hang out. See, I have a pretty much an online team. So there's a couple
Okay.
people here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania that I
Yeah,
see, I wouldn't say every week or so, but I meet up with them every once in a while. And it's mostly
yeah,
online, right? We're a publishing company. We do book fulfillment, marketing, CRMs, all that stuff. So we don't
yeah,
really need to have an office location. However, I do think that going to mastermind or certain events once a year or maybe once every 6 months, absolutely crucial to the team kind of
yeah.
maybe feeling like they belong to a team. So am I right to say that that is instrumental in the development of employees and team members, that you need to have in-person events or just in-person workplace? So what do you recommend there?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many organizations today that are virtual, 100% virtual, and people are all over the place, and they're very productive, and that's great. But to have some meeting pulse that has an in-person element is really powerful. I as I'm coaching and facilitating teams, and we went through COVID, of course, everything kind of went virtual. The ability to build team health when everybody's looking at a rectangle is challenging. You can get alignment, you can get some discipline and accountability, but the human to human, eyeball to eyeball kind of contact there's a gap there. So I strongly agree with you that there has to be some sort of in-person element to it. Now, annually is pretty infrequent to the degree you can make it maybe twice a year, or if it's quarterly, that's great. Oftentimes it's looking backwards. How do we do the last quarter? Where are we today, year to date? And what's it look like for the remainder of the year? It's nice to have a schedule like that where people feel like they're in the loop, and then do some team health. You can do an escape room. You can, go out to dinner, go do axe throwing, other kinds of like activities where you guys are laughing together and having fun. Top golf is common with my teams, and getting to know each other at a different level. The in a virtual setting, of course, you don't have those hallway conversations, and you don't have the nonverbals, and people aren't just running into each other. You get on Zoom or you get on a virtual call, and it's just all business, and then boom. And so, to the degree you can incorporate some of the human element, it's really powerful for the team in terms of retention and productivity.
So I'm assuming you meet with teams with all different backgrounds, all different leaders, all different team members.
Yes.
Uh, how much does age play a factor? From what I've seen, and I'm just thinking of my own life, but at
Yeah.
23 years old, I was just trying to shoot at anything. Let's try this out. Let's try this out. So there
Right.
was no real clear pathway. Oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. Let me try real estate. Let me try this startup. Let me try this startup. Right? I'm
Yeah.
going after anything. So whenever you're growing your team, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, age, really how you handle problems and how you lead is based off of what lands. And I think age plays a factor in how you lead that person and potentially their own background, their own wants, their own needs. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you lead these people based off of who they are, right? You know what works, what doesn't, what motivates them. So
Yeah.
how much does that play a factor in leadership style and what you recommend for people who you coach?
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting question, a great question. The style of the leader obviously is super important, and so there's a humility that I look for in a leader. If they're command and control and all business, it starts to turn people off a little bit. So asking questions, what are you looking for? Asking folks what their dreams are, asking them. You mentioned purpose, a sense of purpose, right? For
Yeah.
people to have retentions. And Dan Pink's written a book called Drive a long time ago, and he talked about autonomy, mastery, and purpose being the three elements of what creates sort of a high performance organization. And so look for those as a leader. How are you helping your team get autonomy, which is that sense of control or sense of like ability to make decisions and move things forward on their own, mastery, like being great at it, and being able to teach others or mentor others, and purpose. What is our bigger purpose? What impact are we having in the organization? Because the money will follow, right? If we do these things, and the research is playing out this way. So a humble leader, and this is like level 5 leadership, Jim Collins speaks about in his books, and a lot of his research shows in that sort of genuinely curious leader who is asking a lot of questions of their direct reports and really interested in the responses. And so not just checking a box there. So those pieces are very important. From an age standpoint, my feeling is that type of style is going to be fairly timeless. If you're talking to a 23-year-old or you're talking to a 55-year-old like I am, I want to be talked to the same way and asked about those kinds of things. And as I get older, certainly my answers might change, but I think the basic structure of that can fit really any age range. I think there's flexibility to schedules, like you said, and not just focusing on the money, being in a competitive range, but then also having other pieces to the culture that appeal to folks. So those are all really important.
Last question I have for you in regards to the content in this book. Do you have anything about maybe testing the limits of people when it comes to like giving individuals more responsibility or management roles? From what I've realized, that the moment you give somebody a management role, I don't know what it is, but they pay attention more, right? They uh
Yeah.
they feel more crucial to the team, and maybe there's more buy-in, but also they think of it from a different perspective rather than just being told what to do. Now they're communicating. And the more you focus on your communication style, I think you develop faster. So
Yeah.
whenever I started to give my first hire more of a responsibility within the company, and it was actually a management role, it was wild to see her growth. So anything you
Cool.
could say about that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think if you ask employees what they think about, what do they worry about, a lot of us, paycheck, benefits, job security, and opportunities for growth is a huge part of what great people want. And so to the degree that's provided for them, where they can feel like they're moving up in the organization, even having one direct report, so they start to understand how to allocate their time to coaching and leading this person, to delegating, to allow them to elevate and letting go of things that they shouldn't be doing because they're in a different sort of structure or tier. And so as they learn to delegate better, they start to see the potential of being a great leader. They need to inspire them to the vision of the organization. They need to provide them with tools and training and resources to be active contributors to the organization. And that takes some intentionality. You can't just kind of wing it and show up, punch a clock, and go in. You have to start to think forward. You have to get better at predicting longer term and not thinking about next week, but start thinking about next quarter and next year, and start to look out a little further with that crystal ball. And so it helps people climb the tree a little higher to see out a little further. And that's always a lot of fun to see a broader perspective as they look forward. And also when they look back, they can have that sense of accomplishment for how far they've come, as since when they first got into the organization. So it really is a win-win all around. And plus this new person who's getting coached by this new leader, they begin to have a much better experience as well. And they feel more part of the team. So great. I love that. Love that question. Thanks, Mike.
You seem like a very well-read guy. I mean, you mentioned a few incredible books, and I always ask our guests, is there one book that you recommend to our audience outside of your own book? So you mentioned
Yeah.
Drive, mentioned some Jim Collins. Is there one that you recommend? I mean, obviously Traction
Yeah.
probably is at the top of the list, but
It's up
anything you
there.
could share?
Yeah. The book that comes to mind is Man's Search for Meaning by Victor.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So, I'm just going to go with that's a three half court shot. That book is powerful. It's powerful. And I reference the lessons that Viktor Frankl teaches in that when I'm teaching teams here around we have freedom in our response. So an event happens, we have a response, and then there's another outcome. And trying to help them feel that freedom, if it's reacting versus responding, or taking 24 hours to think about it, you have freedom in that response. And that's that's a very powerful message that that he was able to share with us through that book. So I'm a big fan of that. That's a game changer.
Yeah, and I look at every situation that is negative at first, it feels negative, and you're thinking, what is this teaching me, right? There's always
Yeah,
a lesson. And then also, is this a test? Am I supposed to respond this way or this way? But this is energy. How do I use this energy for the greater good? And so I love
love
that
that.
book. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
definitely a key piece, right? Because those who have meaning in their life can
yeah,
withstand the fire, but also I
yeah,
don't know. It seems like the storms don't bother them as much, so it gives them a
yeah.
superpower.
Oh, I love that. Where is the gift in this? You can always ask yourself, right?
Yeah, where's the gift?
That's
Wow.
awesome.
So there is a website that you have, and it seems like you coach people on this stuff all the time. So what is your program? Where can they find you?
Yeah, find me, probably the easiest one to say is stretchnotsnap.com. Stretchnotsnap.com. So I grabbed that before I even searched on it because I knew some computer would try and take it. Uh,
Yeah. I
so
like that. You got the domain for the book, and I guess that's I mean that's how my next book was put together. I'm like, what is available? Oh, wow, that's perfect. Let's go with that for the next book
right,
title.
right. That's great. But
So
thank you very
Stretch Not
much.
Stop, they can get the book and they can reach out to you to hire you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, both of those things. And the book's available wherever you buy books. And I recorded the Audible as well because I know a lot of entrepreneurs prefer to listen at 1.2. And but either way, you can get it into your head and hopefully be inspired by it and have a great impact in your organizations. So I
Yeah, you
appreciate
mentioned
you.
a few books there. I want to listen to that. The first one that you recommended, I don't know what it was, but I didn't have my book in front of me to
Oh,
write it
it might have
down.
been this one, Get a Grip. Was it this
Get a
one?
grip. That's it. Yes, yes. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Get a grip.
This is the book that inspired me to write Stretch Not Snap. So it's the same leadership team that's in this book. Uh, but this is like 3 years later. This is EOS. This is Profit Works, if you
Got
will.
it. And that's the Fable one, right? That's the one you
They're both
talked about.
fables. Yep,
Yeah, got it.
exactly. Yeah,
Cool. I'm gonna check that out. I love it.
yeah,
You're helping people grow businesses. I think if we had a world full of entrepreneur-minded people, my God, the problems that would just go away. Am I right? It's crazy. So,
absolutely.
school system, start teaching people how to become entrepreneurs. I know they don't want that because then, and then you're financially independent, you become
It's
way
going to
more free.
happen. It's going to happen.
It's gonna happen. Do you believe that?
Yes, I do. Yep, it's too
So
broken. And
it's
healthcare and like all a lot. The entrepreneur is like, we'll solve any problem. We'll figure it out.
damn straight. Yeah, I'm with you. So I do
Yeah,
believe the future, even though it looks scary and daunting and just corruption everywhere.
yeah,
Entrepreneurs, the more the school system gets worse and worse, I think entrepreneurs will come out with new school systems of their own that'll help people
yeah.
become more entrepreneur-like. And like you said, the healthcare industry, how many people are believing in that anymore? So hopefully entrepreneurs come out of the woodwork and solve these problems.
Amen. Love it.
Hey, thank you so much, Alex Freitag. It's been an honor to talk with you. Thanks so much for being here, man.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate your time. Thank you, guys.
Remember, guys, $1 million book will lead to $1 million life. Right on.